I'll never forget Halloween night in 2016. My 3 friends and I, for narrative purposes, let's call them J, K, N, and L, were out trick-or-treating in the city center. The city center was always bustling on Halloween because the houses were close together, which meant more candy for the distance walked. By 10 p.m., things were starting to calm down, and by 10:30, we were pretty much the only kids left out trick-or-treating. Only 1 out of every 10 houses would actually open their doors at that hour, so we decided to give up and play some pranks around. It was a Saturday after all. When we got tired of trick-or-treating, a lone person dressed as a clown was slowly walking toward us through the thick black fog. It was a genuine clown costume, with crazy makeup, a mouth split in half, and bubbles filled with blood. It was genuinely frightening. The 4 of us laughed and screamed in reaction, but eventually we moved away. We headed to a nearby park to fool around, spray silly string everywhere, and use it as shaving cream. We had a great time, but then Jay pointed to the dark horizon where 2 clowns were walking towards us. One of them was the same clown from before. I didn't think it was possible, but the second clown was even more disturbing than the first. The first clown now appeared to be wielding some sort of long spear-like object, and both of them were slowly approaching us. The funny situation quickly turned into something scary as they got closer. Then they started chasing us, and we ran in different directions. One of the clowns chased me out of the park and down the street. I didn't know the area well, but I knew how to get to Elle's house. I ran the whole way to Elle's house, and halfway there, I lost track of the clown. I called Elle and told him I was in his yard. He was out of breath, but said he had just lost one of the clowns and was on his way. I told him to call Jay, and he said he'd call Kay. Thankfully, Jay answered on the first ring. He hadn't been chased, so he didn't seem as scared. I told him to meet us at Elle's house. 10 minutes later, all 4 of us were in Elle's backyard, gathering our thoughts and discussing what had just happened. We laughed heartily, now that it was over. As we ate some of the candy we had collected, Kay left. Jay, Elle, and I stayed to chat in the living room for a while, with the lights off, the TV on, and playing some Xbox games. Jay looked out the window, then lowered himself and told us to turn off the TV. When we asked why, he said there was a clown outside. We didn't believe him, so I looked out the window. I yelled, "Don't look!" But it was too late. The clown outside Elle's house stared at me through the window. I pulled the curtains and told Elle that Jay wasn't lying. His parents weren't home, so going to his dad wasn't an option. Instead, we turned off the TV and went upstairs to Elle's room. We looked out the window, but the clown was gone. In fact, we never saw either of the 2 clowns again. But the next morning, Elle messaged us to say he had found a rubber clown nose on his backyard patio table. He said it was clearly placed there to scare us, and it worked. Fortunately, that clown epidemic lasted no more than a month, after which it became just an old story. It was Halloween night, and my parents had taken my 2 twin brothers out for trick-or-treating. I didn't have any plans, so my parents assigned me to answer the door and give out candy while they were out. Since we lived in a cold city on a dead-end street, we didn't get many trick-or-treaters on Halloween, so every time the doorbell rang, it made me jump. I was in the living room, watching TV with a bucket of candy next to me on a small table. Butterfingers were the only type of candy my mom always got for Halloween for some reason. The doorbell rang, so I picked up the candy bucket and went to the door, which I opened. There was a person dressed in a scream mask and robe, with a bag over their shoulder. They didn't seem to have gotten much candy that night, as it was getting late and few people were answering their doors. After taking a handful of candy, they left without saying thank you, which made me feel a little uncomfortable. But aside from that, I didn't think much of it as I went back to sit on the couch. The movie I was watching ended, so I started channel surfing. During one of the brief moments of silence as the TV switched from one channel to another, I heard a muffled sound and a thud coming from downstairs near the back door. To hear what it might have been, I lowered the TV's volume and headed toward the stairs. The back door was wide open. My heart started racing as I began to feel queasy inside. I had forgotten to close it when I came back inside. The big question was whether the sound I had heard was the door opening or closing, and whether someone was inside the house. Naturally, I called downstairs for my parents and my twin brothers, but the silence from the dark lower floor was eerie. I was too scared to go down the stairs and open up to the main floor, but sitting in the living room suddenly didn't feel very comfortable. I kept the TV on but muted. I felt safer with the extra light it provided. It took some time, but I finally realized that I needed to call my parents and ask them to come home. My mom assured me they'd be home within half an hour. I told her I was afraid someone might be in the lower floor because I heard something, but she assured me that there was nothing and that it was just my imagination. I hung up the phone, and shortly after I heard a noise from the ceiling above one of the lower stairs. I was stuck on the couch, unable to move a muscle, not even a finger. Then there was another noise as I tried to move slowly into a sitting position. Another step creaked, and I froze completely. Then I heard footsteps above me, in the direction of the stairs leading down to the lower floor. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness by this point, so even without my flashlight, I could see my friend's figure looking down at me from above through a hole in the ceiling. I tried to whisper so he could hear me, but it seemed like he couldn't hear. I didn't want to raise my voice, but suddenly I heard footsteps coming down the stairs in the living room. My friend and I turned on our flashlights, pointing them upward to see who was still up there. Here, however, from the top of the stairs, came my friend. He was confused and scared, not knowing what was happening. The realization hit us instantly, but none of us had the courage to shine the flashlight upwards to see who was still up there. I shouted, "Let's get out of here!" And we all ran to the back door, out of the house, and to one of my friend's houses nearby. The friend who had gone upstairs said he had smelled something nauseating up there, as if there was a decomposing body, and he had also heard someone breathing in one of the rooms. To this day, we don't know who was inside that house, but it seemed unlikely that it was just another curious visitor, given how barricaded the house was. In short, we didn't go back. My family had taken my two younger twin brothers out for trick-or-treating on that Halloween night. I had no plans, so my parents had tasked me with answering the door and handing out candy while they were out with my brothers. Our house was in a quiet neighborhood, so we didn't get many Halloween visitors. Every time the doorbell rang, it made me jump, as I wasn't expecting many trick-or-treaters. I was in the living room, watching TV with a bucket of candy nearby on a small table. Butterfingers were the only candy my mom ever bought for Halloween, for some reason. The doorbell rang, so I grabbed the candy bucket and headed for the door. When I opened it, I saw a person in a Scream costume, wearing a robe and a mask, with a bag for candy in hand. They didn't seem to have had much luck collecting candy that evening, probably because it was getting late, and not many houses were still open for business. After taking a bunch of candies, they left without saying thank you, which left me feeling a bit uneasy. But aside from that, I didn't dwell on it as I returned to the couch. The movie I was watching ended, and I began flipping through TV channels. During one of the brief moments of silence while the TV changed from one channel to another, I heard a thud and a noise coming from the lower part of the stairs, near the back door. To hear it better, I lowered the TV volume and made my way to the staircase. I discovered that the back door was wide open. My heart started racing, and I began to feel queasy. I had forgotten to close it when I came back inside. The big question was whether the sound I had heard was the door opening or closing, and if someone was inside the house. Naturally, I called out for my parents and my twin brothers, but the silence coming from the dark living room was unsettling. I was too scared to go down the stairs and open up to the main floor, but sitting in the living room suddenly didn't feel very comfortable. I kept the TV on but muted. I felt safer with the additional light it provided. It took some time, but I finally realized that I needed to call my father. I explained everything that was happening, and he and my mother rushed home. When my parents arrived, I finally left the living room and rushed to them, explaining everything I had heard. My father and I checked the entire living room and every room in the house, but we found no one. The house was empty, but my heart continued to race. The moral of the story is that it's important to always keep doors locked because evidently, someone had entered through the back door. It was a frightening experience, and I couldn't explain how the door had been left open. The fear from that night haunted me for a long time. It was a lesson that had taught me the importance of security, especially on a night like Halloween.